Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. So this video has been rolling around in my head for a little while now. We need to talk about the rare loot mechanic, and this has been introduced with Myth Draenor expansion, but it's continuing as we found out recently with update 71, which is called the Fall of the Night Brigade. That's in preview right now, but we found out from the developers recently that that's going to continue the rare loot design, the same rare loot mechanic that we found in Myth Draenor. So this has been a huge change for a lot of players. A lot of players don't like it. The vast majority of players from my experience don't like it. I've seen 50-page long threads on the forums talking about it. I see constant talk about it on Discord. Everyone seems to be talking about it. So let's talk about what this rare loot system is and how much lower the drop rates are exactly and what it all means and what I think about it. We'll go through the math too. And I'll kind of show you how the drop rates work and just generally in comparison to this rare drop rate. So what's the big issue for those of y'all who may not have been in the know about this or really been paying attention? Basically, SSG, starting with Myth Draenor, introduced this system, and what it's been doing is putting a big percentage of the loot that's available in the expansion, and presumably this will continue into, we know it's going to continue into the next update. We just don't know how much loot, but what happened with Myth Draenor is a big percentage of Myth Draenor's loot has been put behind these rare drop rate tables, and these rare tables have a very low drop rate, which makes getting a sizable percentage of Myth Draenor's loot extremely difficult. And what I would say, it makes that loot like not practical to get for many players because of how low the drop rate is. So let's start by asking the question, how much of Myth Draenor's loot is behind rare tables? So what I did is I compiled an Excel spreadsheet where I took the amounts of common and rare drops in each chest, and I kind of totaled them up to figure out like what percentage of Myth Draenor's loot is behind rare tables. So here's a screenshot of that spreadsheet right now. So I did use the some data from forum users Sarlona Ratings, so shout out to him for compiling that spreadsheet. So I compiled these numbers by looking at Sarlona Ratings table and also looking at the DDO wiki and combining this. So I didn't include in this table two things. One, I didn't include the weapon suite stuff. So this doesn't include, say, like your Fallen Age and Golden Wage weapons, because those are on a separate loot table. It also does not include Red Wilderness chests loot, just because I couldn't find good data on that. So this could be off slightly, but basically about a third, about 30% or so of the loot from Myth Draenor. So the point is, I wanted to make this table just to show you, like, yeah, it's a sizable percentage of the loot that's behind these rare tables. When it comes to the drop rates, the next thing we want to talk about, how much lower are the drop rates on these rare tables in comparison to the normal drop rates or the common drop rates we have seen throughout DDO? So how long on average does it take to get one of these items in comparison to the standard loot we've always seen in DDO? I'm going to explain that to you right now. We're going to walk through the math. I'm going to swap over to a spreadsheet, another spreadsheet that I came up with. Okay, so next we're going to get into the math here on the probabilities to get a common versus a rare. And I know this is a lot of numbers, but I'm going to go slow. We're going to walk through it, and I'm going to explain all this to you. And if you don't know how drop rates and loot tables work in DDO, this is going to be probably good for that too, just as a general explanation. Okay, so we have two sections here that we're going to go through. The first one is normal quests, and we're going to assume that we're running on R1, and we're also going to assume we're running a Myth Draenor quest with a loot table of 7 common items and 3 rare items. So it would be 7 common named items and 3 of the super rare, the rare items. So that's normal. Like looking through Myth Draenor's quests, a lot of them have 8 common, 3 rare. Some of them have 7 common, 3 rare. We're going to go with 7 and 3 just because it's a little more conservative than 8, 3. And more quests from looking at the wiki have 7, 3, and also looking at Sarlona Ratings Excel table as well, comparing both. More of them have 7.3 than 8.3. So we're going to go with 7.3. Okay. So let's say you want a common item. So just a normal named item. You're not looking for a rare item, you're just looking for a common item. What is the chance that you will get that one common item you're looking for in a run of that quest? So the first thing we do is we have to calculate the chance to hit the named loot table. And that chance, we know what it is because the devs have been very clear about this in the past, but the chance of you hitting the named loot table depends on difficulty. On elite, it's 33%. Elite, it's 33%. On hard, it's 16%. And on normal, it's 10%. And if you run on Reaper, you get an extra 1% per skull. So we're going to, since we're assuming R1, our chance to hit the named loot table is going to be 34%. Now, next calculation. If you hit the named loot table, what's your chance at getting the common table versus the rare table? Well, we'll get into the rare table here in a bit, which is 3%, but the common is 97%. So if you don't get the rare loot table the rest of the time, you're going to get the common, which is going to be the other 97% of the time. So that's the next factor. Finally, if you do hit the named loot table and you do hit the common table, what's the chance then that you hit the item you want, the specific one you want? There's 7 common items in that table. So you have a 1 in 7 chance of getting what you want. So that's about 14.29%. So to calculate your percentage per run to get that specific common item you want, it's going to be 4.7% per run, because that's going to be this basic probability calculation. 34% times 97% times 14.29% ish. So that's going to be that. So how many runs is that going to take you of the quest? That's going to be about 21.22 runs. So you have to round up because there's no such thing as a fifth of a run. So it's basically 22 runs on average to get that named item if you're the only person trying to loot that item and you're running on R1. Okay, so if all 6 members of your party are willing to pass to you, it's going to be 4 rounding up, because that instead of basically you're going to get 6 pulls instead of 1 per run. So average weeks. So you also have ransack to deal with. So if you want to calculate in weeks, it would be about 2 2/3 weeks, because you can only loot a chest 8 times per week. And that assumes 1 character. You can ignore this if you have alts that can effectively bypass the ransack mechanic in DDO. But if you don't know, if with ransack and DDO, you can only loot a chest 8 times until it stops dropping name loot. So, and this is something else I calculate, average weeks if you're ransacking 1 character in a full group where they're all passing. So that would be like easily within a week, you should be able to get your item. So that's the common. So let's get to the rare. Okay, so let's say you are running this a quest and you want something from the rare table. So you're running just a Myth to Nor quest. You want something from the rare table that you're farming. A lot of these numbers are going to be pretty similar. So 34% is the same to reach the named loot table. A 3% chance. So based on my research, players have been able to figure out exactly what this is. So pretty positive it's 3%. Maybe it's a little different, 4%, 5%, but I'm pretty positive based on what I'm reading from players and what some of the things they've done, that it is 3% for the rare loot table. But that is an assumption, I have to say. So I can't say that with certainty. That is an assumption. Okay, so let's say in this instance, there are 3 rare items on the rare loot list. So if you hit that rare table, you have a 1 in 3 chance, or 33%, to get the item you need. So basic probability, you have to time these 3 numbers together. So your chance per run to get a specific item is 0.34%. And the reason that's so much lower is because of that rare table. You only get the rare table 3% of the time. That really, really drops your probability. So 0.34% chance per run to get a specific rare item. It's not to hit the rare loot table. That's to get a specific item. So that would be these 3 numbers multiplied together. So what does that mean? That means on average, it's going to take you 295 rounding up average runs of the quest. And these are average runs. So that means that's on with average luck. You could easily go double or triple this in terms of your number of runs if you get unlucky. Or you could get it in your first run of the quest, conceivably, if you get really, really lucky. That's just on average. And again, I got this number. If you have 6 members of your party passing, it's 49 runs on average. That's why for a lot of this stuff, guys, if you want a rare item, you need to be grouping with people willing to pass. It is brutal if you're trying to farm this stuff solo. And that's just a good general rule in DDO. Try to make friends and try to get people in your group willing to pass if you're farming loot. But yeah, average weeks, so the same thing, 36 point, about 36 and 3/4 weeks if ransacking 1 character, in about 6 weeks if you're ransacking 1 character, and a full group is all passing to you. Okay, so that is the regular quest. So where it gets really nasty is the purple rare wilderness chests. So this is what I've seen lots of players complain about, because there's some really, really nice items in the purple named rare, particularly a cloak which has a really nice HP bonus on it that I've seen a lot of people going after. So let's get into the purple named rares. Okay, so let's say that you're farming, and this is either the purple worm or the dragon in the Mithranor wilderness. So let's say you're farming not a rare, but just a common item from the purple rare chests. So there's an occurrence rate you have to deal with. So these purple named rares, the dragon and the purple worm, they are not always there. And this is an assumption, but I believe it is 1 in 4. I can't get confirmation of that, so I could be wrong. But it's something like 1 in 4, 1 in 3. I'm pretty sure it's 1 in 4, but I can't. Again, that's an assumption. I want to be very clear. But it's not there every time, right? You can run out to the cave, and the dragon isn't there. So you have to continually reset the wilderness. So about 25% of the time, you're going to run to the cave, or in the purple rare is going to actually be there. So there's a 25% occurrence rate. Then we're going to get to the chance for the name table. So so with wilderness, one thing that makes farming and has made farming wilderness chests, whether it's Isle of Dread or any other wilderness chest for a specific named item, is that those instances only work on normal difficulty. They function on normal difficulty. So you get the normal difficulty drop rate, which, as I talked about before, was 10%. So in update 69.2, SSG upped the chance for the named table in the wilderness rares. Now, we don't know, and this is another assumption, we don't know that it's 33% that they upped it to, that's the exact number, but we're pretty sure, because it's the only number that would make sense, because there's only 3 numbers that those tables are going to work on traditionally, which is the 10, 16, and 33%. So it's a pretty darn great assumption that the rate is 33%. So don't know that for sure, but it makes sense that when they upped that and made that change in U69.2, that they would have changed it from the normal to the elite. Okay, so yeah, so that's what that is, the chance for the name table. You can't run it on Reaper and Wilderness area, right? So aren't getting the 34%. Like up here, we're getting the 33%. So that's the chance for the name table. If you hit the name table, you have a chance for the common name table. So again, just like above, once you hit the name table, the game's going to do another probability roll on, did you hit the common table or did you hit the rare table? Same percentage, 3 and 97%. So 97% of the time, you're going to hit the common name table. And then you have a chance for your items. So we're running a chest with 6 common items and 4 rare. So on the common loot table, there's 6 items, so it's going to be a 1 in 6 chance, or 16.67% chance. So basic probability math is you're going to multiply all these numbers together, and that gives you the 1.33% chance. So that is the chance per run to the wilderness area location that you're going to be able to get that specific item, okay? That is not per lootings of the chest, that's per times you run out to the rare. So it's going to so every time you run out to the rare, you're going to have a 1.33% chance of getting a common named item from those purple rare wilderness chests. So that means your average runs to that spot is about 75. It's take you 75 runs on average to the wilderness area to get a common named item, not a rare, a common. And if we want to take out this occurrence rate and just calculate what is the chance per chest looting to get a specific item, so every time you pull the chest, it's going to be about 5.34% chance to get a specific item. That's not to get a named item, that's to get a specific named item. So again, that's going to be 5.34. That means it's going to take you 18.75 or about 19 kills of the dragon or of the purple worm to get your item. So that's 2.34 average weeks if we're including the ransacks and you're only ransacking 1 character, okay? So that's just this average chest lootings divided by 8 to get the number of weeks, because you can only loot a chest 8 times per week. So yeah, so about 2.5 weeks or 2 1/3 weeks to get your item if you're ransacking and you're looting solo just to get a common item. Okay, So let's get to the really nasty one, which is if you are trying to farm a rare item from the wilderness chests, from the purple rares. This is brutal. So similar numbers, same reasons. I don't think I need to repeat all this. I've already explained, but you're going to have that 3% chance for a rare table versus the 97% chance for the rare table. So what does this result in? Times all these together, and that drops you to a 0.06 chance per run to the cave to get that specific rare item you want. So every time you run to that rare, you have a 0.06% chance to get a specific rare item. That means you have to run out to that purple rare 1,616 times on average to get that item, to get a specific rare item you want. So that's just going to be this 1 divided by this percentage to get to average runs. So that means if we want to take out, and that factors in the occurrence rate, obviously, of 1 in 4. So if we want to take that out and just say, okay, what's my chance every time I loot a chest? It's going to be 0.25% chance. So that's just the same calculation here. We're not factoring in the occurrence rate. So that's the chance to get a specific rare item. And it's going to take you 404 chest lootings of that rare wilderness purple rare chest to get a specific rare item you want. So that means it's going to take you, if you're ransacking one character solo, it's going to take you 51 weeks, about a year on average to get that item. And I have to emphasize, these are averages. With any kind of RNG, there's going to be a lot of variance. So it could take you, it could easily take you 800 chest lootings, it could take you 1,200 chest lootings. It could take you 2 years, 3 years easily with bad RNG. This is just on average. But at the same time, it could take you a month, it could take you 2 months if you get really lucky. So yeah, that is where we're at with the named items. It's you can just see the comparisons here. Just absolutely how brutal it is in terms of the farming time differences. Okay, so that is the math, that's the data. Let's get to my overall thoughts on this. This is a huge change. The only other expansion that did something like this was Feywild with its Fey Twisted loot, but even that wasn't even close to being like this, just because with Fey Twisted, any chest in Feywild could be Fey Twisted. There weren't that many items on the list. And for the raid loot and Dryad and the Demigod that was Fey Twisted, you could eventually get that with raid runes. So there was a path to actually getting what you wanted without having to deal with extremely variable and tiny drop rate RNG. The main issue, I think, though, with this system is just the sheer amount of volume of loot that's hidden behind the rare tables. Like, I think having some chase items is cool and fun, like having a very small amount of items that you can chase is really cool, and it adds a lot of replayability to the item. It makes that item feel very, very special. And in the case of, say, something like the Blade of Jack Gibbers, you can justify having a really powerful item because the power of that item is balanced out by the rarity of the item. So I think it's cool in small doses. But the issue here is they put way too much loot behind rare loot tables. I mean, 30%, about a third of the loot, that is just way too many. And when you expand the rare loot table to being this large, I don't think you can even call it a rare loot table anymore. At this point, they aren't rare tables. That's just the normal loot table. You know, to me, a rare table means like really unessential, small number of items behind a rare loot table. It doesn't mean a third of the expansion's loot or an adventure pack's loot. I mean, that's just the normal table at this point, not even considering the amount of desirable items. When you look past just the plain number of items, look at the number of items that are desirable that are hidden behind these rare loot tables. There's so many optimized gear sets that aren't possible without at least one piece of this rare loot. And with the way the loot Tetris and DDO works, with the way the Sun Moon augment system works, and having to have a specific augment for that slot, not having just one rare item can mean the entire gear set has to be thrown out for the min-max crowd. I mean, we all know how loot Tetris works in DDO. If you can't get one thing, you have to rearrange the whole entire gear set. So the other thing I want to point out is that the Sun Moon augment system, while I think it's really cool, in on paper. When you combine it with this rare loot table, it becomes an even bigger problem, because not only do you have to farm out the augment, you have to farm out the item and the augment, right? When you think of something like, say, like Sharn, part of the family set, there's 3 items, and that's all you have to farm out is 3 items. But now think of it, if you had Sharn part of the family, but the set bonus part of it was augmented out and they were separate drops, then you'd have to farm. You have to do double the farming, because you need 6 items instead of 3. So that's the way Myth Drannor works. You don't have to farm. You don't have to just farm out the item. You have to farm out the augment to get your set bonus. So inherently, you have double the items, double the chance for something you need to be behind a rare loot table. So because of this, I find that a lot of players are doing what I'm doing with, is that content with this loot design with Myth Drannor, and presumably more content. We'll have to see what the extent that they continue this system, but any content with this loot design is likely to just be ignored. And that's unfortunately what I'm doing. Before Myth Drannor dropped, I saw the loot, and you all saw this. I did a video on the loot, and I was excited about it. My plan was to farm out a heroic Myth Drannor gear set to combine with my Sharn heroic gear set, because right now I'm doing a lot of iconic reincarnations, and I thought, hey, I'll make a cool Myth Drannor gear set, and I'll have a super cool level 15 minimum level gear set for levels 15 to 20 that consists of Sharn loot and Myth Drannor loot. And I thought it'd be really cool, but because of this rare loot system, I'm instead just ignoring the Myth Drannor loot entirely. To this day, I've not farmed out a single piece of Myth Drannor gear, and I've helped out some friends, but I personally have never gone for anything myself, and I probably never will until this system has changed. And it's just really unfortunate when drop rates are this low. The gear becomes, in all practicality, unattainable for me, and the only thing I can do is just ignore it. So let's get on to why is SSG doing this? What value does this bring to the game? There's really only 2 reasons I can think of. The first one is to extend the longevity of the content. They want us to keep playing. They don't want us to get all of our gear too quickly. We only get full expansions every 2 years. So this loot, and that's when we tend to get the level increases and the power increases. So we want it to be a loot chase that doesn't just last a month or 2, right? This should be gear that we acquire over a period of time. They don't want us to run out of stuff too quickly, because then we'll get bored. So they don't really want us to get everything we want in the first couple of weeks. They want us to be more of an extended, longer term thing. So that's number one. They want us to have loot to chase and give more longevity to the content. Now, the other reason is to encourage rerolls for astral shards, and that's what a lot of players are accusing them of. It's just all about the money and trying to milk the high spending players. So of these 2 things, which is it? So am I cynical enough to think that money is the only factor in this decision? No. But am I naive enough to think money doesn't factor in at all? Of course not. I think it's a mix of the 2. I think SSG is staffed by people who in good faith try to balance the game, needing to make a certain amount of money to keep running, with offering a game that is fun and fair to players, whether you spend a lot or not. I do think they in good faith try to balance those 2 things. Certainly I don't believe anyone over at SSG is just rolling in the money and getting super rich off this game. So the other thing is they are, however, continuing this system in the next update, despite overwhelmingly negative feedback from what I can tell, which does suggest they are seeing higher DDO store sales of astral shards. Do we know that? No. Is that an assumption? Yes. Do we have any access to DDO's financial reports? No, unless EG7 puts out something. But EG7, which is a company that owns Daybreak, they put out financial reports, but they're there's very rarely specific information on DDO. But them continuing it, despite the negative feedback, does suggest that they are seeing some sales in the store, higher sales of astral shards. Do I know that? No, but it does suggest that, because why else would they continue a system that's this unpopular, despite players clearly voicing that unpopularity? What should you do if you don't like this loot design? You should let SSG know and tell them. Reply to them on Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, any other social media they use. Post on the DDO.com forums, post, go to the official Discord, where, to the devs' credit, they've been very communicative on the official Discord, and go in there and talk to the devs about it. I think the official Discord is going to be your official DDO Discord is going to be your best bet, rather than the DDO forums, just because I don't see hardly any developers responding on the DDO forums or really communicating outside of Lamania previews, except for Cordovan, but Cordovan's not a developer. He's a community manager. But what would I like to see personally? So what can we do about the situation? I don't know what to say other than, yeah, I just want less loot on the rare tables. I think it could have been a cool idea from the start with Mitronor, with this whole sun moon system. I thought it would be really cool if they had, like, every quest had every quest had 2 chests. One was a sun chest, one was a moon chest. One dropped sun stuff, one dropped moon stuff, or just each chest had a chance for the moon table and the sun table, and one wasn't rare, one wasn't common. There, it was like 50-50 chance for each one. I think that would have been cool, but more realistically, with the way the game is now, one thing they could do is do separate tables for augments and items, because right now the augments share the same loot table as the items, and that waters down, like, if you're looking for a specific item, the augments being on the table does water down your chances. So that would help, would de facto increase drop rates, increasing the rare rate in general, making the purple rares, just make the purple rares be there every time. That would just kill a lot of dead time from just farming that rare. So what else could they do? The one thing that a lot of people have talked about is I think it would be reasonable, if they do nothing else, on the Mitronor saga list, have a random, every single time you do the saga, just have a completely random Mitronor item. It could be anything, I mean, not including the weapon suite. Just have a random item on your saga list, including everything, rares and commons. I think that would be cool. That would be something they could do. Some other players have mentioned having some kind of ingredient, so that maybe when you get a rare, they could do it in a lot of ways, but maybe when you get a rare chest, you get one ingredient, and when you get a certain number of ingredients, you can pick any rare item you want, or maybe make it so that you can crunch 3 rare items for a rare item of your choice, something like that. Anything like that would be a nice improvement. But guys, what do you think? Why don't you post below in the comments? Let me know what you think about this. If this bothers you, if you're farming out these rare loots, and yeah, just let me know. That's gonna be it for this video, guys. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Take care.